Hello everybody, my name is Brandon, aka the BrandoCritic, and our Spider-Man journey ends here with the Tom Holland Spider-Man Homecoming. Now, I saw this movie opening weekend last year, and I think I went into it with a bit too much hype because I walked out feeling a little unsatisfied. Maybe I just had the nostalgic feeling of the original Spider-Man and I wanted it to be recreated on the big screen, but that was the wrong mindset to go into this movie with, because this movie is more like Spider-Boy than Spider-Man, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. This film definitely takes a new approach on Spider-Man that we haven't seen before on the big screen. Yes, we have seen Spider-Man in high school before, but we saw him near the end of high school and what his life is like being a young adult, whereas this Spider-Man is only 14 or 15 years old. Also, we get no origin story. Now here's the thing about that. When I first saw it, I said, oh, well then the motivation of guilt and responsibility goes right out the window, which bothered me watching it for the first time. But going back on it and knowing that this is a different take on Spider-Man, his motivation for doing what he does is trying to impress Tony Stark, the father figure he never had. And that in and itself is actually a pretty good motivation for a character. The lost father figure trying to live up to him and not wanting to be treated like a kid is actually a pretty good motivation. Something else that's a bit different about this movie is that Spider-Man has a friend, Ned, to talk to about his powers. And I think that really works well with the high school dynamic, because what do high schoolers do? They gossip. And can I tell anyone? Can I tell someone that you're Spider-Man? No, keep it a secret, dude. It's very high school, and it works. Also, since that we're in high school, this allows for a lot of good jokes, and I laughed out loud quite a few times in this movie. Just know that you're getting into a definitely more of a comedic Spider-Man movie. This is Marvel after all. And I also like that this movie feels contained. What do I mean by that? Almost every single Marvel movie or Avengers movie, it feels like it's gotta be the most grand, epic movie you've ever seen in your entire life. The Avengers, a giant blue beam shoots up into the sky. Avengers Age of Ultron, a giant blue beam shoots up into the sky. Oh, Asgard's gonna get destroyed. Oh, in Captain America, like these giant warships are gonna kill everyone. And it's very hard to keep the stakes getting higher and higher and higher and higher and higher. Which is why I like that this movie contains a kid who, you know, is trying to be Spider-Man, but he's just a kid, right? He's messing up and he doesn't really know how to use his powers yet, and he's facing a villain who's not trying to take over the world. He just wants to do some illegal things by selling some weapons, and that's it. It feels very contained. Much like Ant-Man, I like that this movie is not trying to set up a bunch of sequels and trying to make this grand epic universe. It knows it's a part of one, and there's some callbacks to the Avengers and Iron Man and Captain America, but it feels very contained, and I like that. And lastly, I think I should talk about Tom Holland himself as Spider-Man. I think Tobey Maguire will always be my Spider-Man Peter Parker because he was the first one that I saw. I remember my media literacy teacher talking about James Bond and saying that your first James Bond will always be the one that you love the most, or the one that you will cherish the most. And to that I say that's a bit true. My first James Bond movie was actually Die Another Day, but the first Bond film I ever saw in theaters was Skyfall, because I got into James Bond in between Quantum of Solace and Skyfall. So to me, Daniel Craig will always be my James Bond, even though technically I think Sean Connery might be better, but Daniel Craig has the place in my heart. Here, I might think that Tom Holland might be actually better than Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield, but Tobey Maguire will always be my Spider-Man because I saw him first. But he captures the essence of that nerdy kid who's awkward, but he's also kind of a, I wouldn't say cocky, but makes a lot of quips because he's a teenager. He's trying to act cool, and it doesn't come across as super annoying. There are some scenes where I'm like, okay, you can just shut up, but it works for the most part. And I can understand why people say that he is the best representation of Spider-Man, because people look at Tobey Maguire and think the crying and the baby face and the kind of weird acting, or at least in the dialogue with Mary Jane. And some people look at Andrew Garfield and think he's a bit too cocky and a bit too good looking to pull off the Peter Parker. I think Tom Holland is the perfect balance. So I think we finally got ourselves a Spider-Man that we can all agree on. And he's in a movie that is very enjoyable. It's not the best. I don't think it's the best Spider-Man movie out there, and I don't think it's the best superhero movie ever made. Some people do, but I think that's just every Marvel movie ever. Black Panther, best Marvel movie ever. Doctor Strange, best Marvel movie ever. I've heard it before, guys. So for Spider-Man Homecoming, I would give a 4 out of 5. Although I was a bit disappointed the first time I saw it, after going into it with new eyes, knowing that this is a different Spider-Man with a different origin story, or with no origin story I should say, and just a different feel, this movie is a really good time. Anyways guys, thank you so much for watching. You can read the original review at BrandoCritic.com. If you like what you see here, definitely click like and subscribe. And I want you guys to tell me what is your favorite Spider-Man movie. And also, what Spider-Man villain should they do next? Anyways guys, thank you so much for watching. Take care.